The Sterling Club was the kind of restaurant where reservations were made 6 months in advance, and the smallest entree cost more than most people's weekly salary. Crystal chandeliers cast soft light over white tablecloths, and the clientele wore their wealth like armor. Rolex watches, designer suits, the casual confidence of people who'd never been told no in their lives. Maya Chen moved through the dining room with practiced grace, balancing a wine bottle and 2 glasses on her tray. At 26, she'd been working at the Sterling Club for 3 years, long enough to master the art of being simultaneously invisible and indispensable, present but never intrusive, attentive without being obsequious. She'd also learned to handle difficult customers. The Sterling Club attracted a particular breed of wealthy patron who confused money with permission to treat staff like furniture. Table 7 was her current challenge. Richard Blackwood sat alone at a prime table, his silver hair perfectly styled, his grey suit probably worth more than Maya's car. At 53, he was the CEO of Blackwood Industries, a tech empire worth billions. Forbes profiled him regularly. Politicians courted his donations. The Sterling Club manager had personally insisted Maya handle his table. He was that important. He was also, Maya was discovering, that insufferable. "This wine is the wrong temperature," Richard said without looking up from his phone. Not a request for correction, a statement of failure. "I apologize, Mr. Blackwood. I'll bring another bottle immediately. Don't apologize. Do your job correctly the first time." His tone was cutting, dismissive, the voice of someone who'd spent decades having his complaints validated simply because he could afford to complain. Maya's jaw tightened, but she maintained her professional mask. "Of course, sir." She returned to the wine cellar, selected another bottle from the same vintage but a different rack, temperature controlled differently, and brought it to the table. This time she poured a small amount into his glass for approval. Richard swirled it, tasted it, then set down the glass with a sharp click. "This tastes off. What year is this?" 2015, sir, the same year you ordered. "It's wrong. Bring me the 2014. Maya had been working with wine long enough to know that the 2015 was actually superior. The 2014 had been an off year for that vineyard, something any true wine connoisseur would know. But she also knew better than to argue with a customer who was clearly more interested in asserting dominance than enjoying wine. "Right away, sir." When she returned with the 2014, Richard took one sip and smiled with smug satisfaction. "See? This is what I wanted. Why couldn't you get it right the first time?" "Because you're playing power games," Maya thought. "Because you need to make someone feel small to feel big." But she said, "My apologies, Mr. Blackwood. Will you be ready to order your entree?" "Not yet. I'm still deciding. Though honestly, the menu is limited tonight. Who approved these choices?" "The head chef, sir. Chef Bernard has 3 Michelin stars. I didn't ask for his resume. I asked who thought this limited menu was acceptable for a restaurant of this caliber." Maya felt her professionalism fraying. She'd dealt with demanding customers before, but something about Richard Blackwood's casual cruelty, the way he treated her existence as an inconvenience, was wearing through her patience. "I'll let the chef know you have concerns." "The chef?" Richard's voice rose slightly, drawing attention from nearby tables. "I'm not talking to the chef. I'm talking to you. You're my server. You're responsible for my experience. And right now my experience is that this restaurant has declining standards and poorly trained staff who can't even pour wine at the correct temperature." Other diners were watching now. The manager, sensing trouble, was moving toward their table. Maya felt her face flush, not with embarrassment, but with rising anger. "Mr. Blackwood, I'm doing my best to provide excellent service. Your best isn't good enough." Richard's voice was loud now, commanding attention from half the dining room. "I come to this restaurant expecting a certain standard, and instead I get incompetence disguised as service. Maybe if you spent less time making excuses and more time doing your job properly, Mr. Blackwood, Maya's voice cut through his tirade, quiet but carrying steel underneath. The entire restaurant had gone silent now, all eyes on their table. "I'm going to say this once, and I need you to listen very carefully." Richard looked up at her, shock registering on his face. Apparently no one had interrupted him in years. "Shout at me again," Maya continued, her tone level but unwavering, "and this ends. I will stop serving you. I will walk away from this table. I don't care who you are or how much money you have. You don't get to abuse me or anyone else who works here just because you're having a bad day and need to feel powerful." The restaurant was dead silent. Forks had frozen mid-bite. Conversations had stopped. Even the background music seemed to pause. Richard Blackwood stared at Maya like she'd grown a second head. "Excuse me? Do you know who I am?" "Yes, you're a customer, and I'm a person. Those two facts don't cancel each other out." Maya set down her order pad. "I've brought you 3 different bottles of wine, all perfectly acceptable. I've answered your questions politely. I've apologized for things that weren't my fault, but I'm done being your emotional punching bag. I'll have you fired, maybe you will, but that doesn't change the fact that what you're doing right now, shouting at someone who can shout back using your money as permission to treat me like garbage, that's not strength. That's just bullying someone who's required to smile while you do it." The manager reached their table, his face pale. "Miss Chen, perhaps we should—" "She's assaulting me," Richard sputtered. "This waitress is being completely inappropriate." "I'm setting a boundary," Maya corrected. "There's a difference. You can speak to me with respect, or you can find another server. Those are your options." Richard looked around the restaurant, clearly expecting support, validation, agreement that this uppity waitress needed to be put in her place. Instead, he saw something else in the watching faces, some sympathetic to Maya, others studiously neutral, but none jumping to his defense. One woman at a nearby table actually nodded at Maya with approval. Richard's face went through several shades of red. He was used to being the most important person in any room, used to his displeasure causing immediate scrambling to fix things. But Maya just stood there, calm, waiting for his decision. "You can't talk to me this way," he said finally, but his voice had lost its commanding edge. "I just did." Maya picked up her order pad. "So, Mr. Blackwood, are we going to have a respectful interaction where I serve you professionally and you treat me like a human being? Or are we done here?" The manager looked like he might have a heart attack. Several diners had phones out, clearly recording. This moment was going to end up on social media regardless of how it resolved. Richard Blackwood sat back in his chair, and something shifted in his expression. The bluster cracked, revealing something unexpected underneath, not anger, but something almost like surprise, or maybe recognition. "My wife used to talk to me like that," he said quietly, so quiet Maya almost didn't hear him, before she died. "She was the only person who'd call me on my bullshit, who'd tell me when I was being an ass." The restaurant was still silent, everyone straining to hear. "I'm sorry for your loss," Maya said carefully, sensing the change in atmosphere but not trusting it yet. "It's been 2 years. I thought I'd processed it, moved on. But I guess I've just been taking my grief out on everyone around me." Richard looked up at her, really looked at her for the first time. "You're right. What I was doing, that was bullying. I was angry at the world for taking her, and you were convenient to yell at. That's not acceptable. I apologize." Maya studied him, trying to determine if this was genuine or manipulation. But there was something in his eyes, a weariness, a recognition of his own behavior that seemed real. "Apology accepted," she said carefully. "Would you like to start over? I think I'd like that." Richard managed a small smile. "And I think the 2015 was actually excellent. My palate was off because I was already looking for something to criticize." Maya poured him a fresh glass. "The 2015 is actually the better vintage. The 2014 was an off year, but most people don't know that. But you do. I've been studying wine for 3 years. It's part of being good at my job. The job I take pride in, even when customers make it difficult. I imagine I made it very difficult tonight. You did. But you also just demonstrated something rare, the ability to recognize your behavior and apologize for it. That actually is impressive, Mr. Blackwood. Most people in your position would have just demanded to speak to the manager and had me fired. I considered it, Richard admitted. But then you set a boundary and I realized you were right. I was being a bully, and my wife would have been ashamed of me. His voice roughened. She always said that how you treat people who can't fight back shows who you really are. I've apparently forgotten that lesson. The restaurant was slowly returning to normal noise levels, though Maya could feel eyes still on them. The manager hovered nearby, clearly unsure whether to intervene or retreat. "Tell me about the menu," Richard said, his tone completely different now, conversational, genuine. "What would you recommend?" Maya relaxed slightly. "The lamb is exceptional tonight. Chef Bernard sources from a local farm, and the rosemary preparation is one of his specialties. Then I'll trust your recommendation. And Maya, it is Maya, right?" "Yes, I'm sorry. Truly, you deserved better than how I behaved tonight." Word of the confrontation spread quickly. By the next morning, someone's phone video had gone viral. Waitress stands up to Billionaire, and the internet was divided between people praising Maya's courage and people claiming she should have been fired for disrespecting a customer. Richard Blackwood's office received hundreds of calls, most of them condemning his behavior. His PR team scrambled to contain the damage, but Richard surprised everyone by releasing his own statement. "Last night, I behaved poorly toward a restaurant server who was simply doing her job. I was rude, demanding, and used my position to bully someone who couldn't easily defend themselves." Maya Chen did what more people should do. She set a boundary and reminded me that wealth doesn't excuse cruelty. I'm grateful to her for that reminder, and I apologize publicly for my behavior. I'm also making a donation of $100,000 to hospitality worker support charities because people like Maya deserve better than customers like I was last night. The statement went viral too, praised for its honesty and accountability. But Richard did something else that went unreported. He returned to the Sterling Club the following week and asked to be seated in Maya's section. When she approached, wary, he handed her an envelope. "I don't expect you to accept this, but I want to offer it," he said. "It's a scholarship application for the culinary management program at Johnson Institute. Full tuition, room and board, stipend for living expenses. You mentioned you've been studying wine for 3 years. I looked you up, found out you've been trying to save for sommelier certification while working 3 jobs. This would give you the education and credentials to stop waiting tables and start managing restaurants. Or running your own." Maya stared at the envelope. "Why would you do this?" "Because you were right. And because my wife always said that when someone shows you your own failings, you should thank them and do better. This is me trying to do better. This feels like you're trying to buy forgiveness. I'm trying to support someone who clearly has talent and drive, but lacks the resources to fully pursue them. If you're uncomfortable accepting from me, consider it a memorial to my wife, Catherine. She believed in giving people chances. She'd have liked you." Maya opened the envelope, looked at the scholarship details. It was legitimate. She'd heard of the Johnson Institute program, knew it was prestigious and expensive. "I don't know what to say. Say you'll apply. Say you'll stop letting people like I was that night treat you as less than you are. Say you'll take your talent and build something with it." Richard smiled sadly. "And maybe say you forgive a grieving idiot who needed a waitress to remind him how to be human." 3 years later, Maya Chen opened her own restaurant, a more casual place than the Sterling Club, but with a carefully curated wine list and a reputation for exceptional service and staff treatment. She paid her servers living wages, offered benefits, and had a zero-tolerance policy for customer abuse. On opening night, Richard Blackwood was there, seated at a corner table. When Maya approached, he smiled. "I hear the lamb is exceptional." "It is, but I'd actually recommend the duck tonight. It's a special preparation I've been working on." "Then I'll trust the chef's recommendation. You've come a long way from warning billionaires that shouting has consequences. I learned from a difficult customer that standing up for yourself can change everything, both for you and sometimes for them." Maya smiled. "Thank you. For the scholarship, for the support, but mostly for being willing to hear the truth. Thank you for being brave enough to tell it." Catherine would have loved this place. She always said the best restaurants were the ones where staff were treated like family and customers earned their welcome. Richard raised his water glass. To boundaries, second chances, and waitresses who don't take anyone's bullshit, not even from billionaires. Maya clinked her glass against his. To that, because that's what her warning in the Sterling Club had taught both of them, that money doesn't exempt anyone from basic human decency, that service workers deserve respect, not servitude, and that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is set a boundary and mean it, even when the person you're setting it with could theoretically end your career with one phone call. Richard Blackwood had learned that grief wasn't an excuse for cruelty, that power carried responsibility, and that the people who serve you are just that, people, deserving of dignity and respect. And Maya Chen had learned that standing up for yourself, even when it's terrifying, even when you might lose your job, is worth it. Because self-respect matters more than any paycheck, and sometimes the people who need to hear no the most are the ones who've never heard it before. The video of their confrontation was still used in hospitality training programs, an example of professional boundary setting under pressure. But the real lesson wasn't captured on camera. It was what happened after, when a billionaire heard a warning and chose growth over revenge, when a waitress took a risk and changed not just her own life but challenged someone powerful to examine their behavior and choose differently. That's the story behind the viral moment. That's what happened when Maya Chen warned Richard Blackwood, "Shout at me again and this ends," and he chose differently.